talking for 20 seconds. I'm kidding.
Oh, we're live already.
No, we're not. That would be great.
It like cues up. Welcome to the podcast. We still, by the way, need to fucking script something.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And have some kind of flow where you say something and I say something, and it's not like kind of like, oh, we're supposed to say something, but I'm not sure what's happening right now.
Oh yeah. Well, I think if we prepared, more than like a day in advance, that would probably help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think switching over to the every other week should help. I mean, if I can have something by like midweek on the first week, so we can start studying, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, for me, a lot of this stuff, like I'm so engrossed in, like at least all the subjects that we've covered, like I don't feel I need, I need to find videos and things that I think are interesting and things that I'd like to say that other people can say that might be taken more seriously than me, but as a general statement.
Yeah. Well, welcome to A Thunderous Applause. I'm Zack.
And I'm Steve.
And we've been live for about 30 seconds.
Oh, wonderful. With Thunderous Applause, the podcast where two friends with differing points of view discuss current events. And today we are talking about bright green lies.
Yes. It's going to be great because it just beats down my point of view entirely.
That's right. And I think it's an important perspective that's missing in the popular conversation, the popular discourse on environmental issues. And a lot of the material that we're going to cover today discusses that.
Oh, for sure.
But first, let's check in. What's up, dude?
Nothing much. Just scheduling work for Rachel to go inspect and making phone calls to get people all lined up and making sure we got steady workflow, and then cleaned up the backyard so we can plant some poppy seeds. Hopefully have some poppies by the end of the season, and then have them spread throughout the backyard like a weed.
Which a cultivated like nursery cultivar or like a California poppy?
California poppy and a mix of, I believe, the cultivated ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, 2 different seed packets.
Yeah, there are. I mean, poppies are like most flowers. There's dozens and dozens of horticultural varieties. So yeah, that's interesting. I hope that works out for you. I also like to keep poppies. The annual grasses always wind up poking through.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go through, but it really does have a good weed suppressing effect.
That's what I'm aiming for. Yeah. Because during the winter, I've got the oxalis or wood sorrel.
Yeah.
That grows up and blocks out a lot of stuff. Like it spreads up and it spreads fast. And so I've got a whole lot of that going on. And I figured I just need something during the summer when it's drier, because the oxalis dies off like late April usually. It's just not built for the heat, and so I gotta have something to take over once it dies off that isn't nettle.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. I'm glad you're doing that on your little postage stamp in the right. Like it's the title of the yard, right?
It's probably like 30 by 30, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not tiny, but yeah, and then
it's big enough to hang out and drink some beers in.
Yeah, and then like there's some holdovers. We got some sage that just kept on going from last year. We got strawberries, and then
awesome.
Artichokes that are hung out.
Yeah, artichokes, and it's their wild cousin. I don't do I have any? No, I don't have any artichokes right now, and the fucking pocket gophers have gotten most everything in my yard for whatever reason.
Oh no. What about the cat?
Well, he's working at it. If he's not fucking sleeping in my damn chair, making me stand up while I fucking have a cigarette. He's cool though. He's cool. We adopted more or less adopted a feral cat or a neighborhood cat. He is neutered and has an ear clip, so we think he must have been like one of those strays that gets captured by the city and then sterilized and returned.
Yeah.
But he's pretty chill, man. We've actually been feeding him and fighting off all the other neighborhood cats that come around, and we've been applying flea medicine to him.
Crucial.
And I think the plan is what I told the cat was that if he kills 2 gophers, that will make him an indoor cat. So part of the flea medicine and stuff is just kind of ensuring that he's not carrying a population. And the other thing is we're gonna catch him. And he's cool. We can pick him up and pet him and stuff. He's really chill.
Yeah.
He's not one of those cats that plays by batting either, which I fucking hate because cat claws are sharp as shit.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he's a really low key cat, but we do want to catch him and take him to the vet and have him inspected, to make sure he doesn't have a chip and doesn't actually belong to someone, and he's just coming over here to eat because we feed him better food, or we just feed him more regularly. Like some people that have an outdoor cat, they just and especially, I mean, maybe that's too much for just a check-in, but I have some pretty kind of shifty ass neighbors or people that live in my neighborhood that I could totally imagine like they get a kitten and then after that it's like, oh, whatever. And then it'll be like, there's a bowl there, but it's empty and no one even fucking thinks. Cause like, they have 6 cats and they have 30 fucking chickens that breed. And they're just like, well, they're my pets. I can't keep them in a yard. I was like, well, my fucking chickens are in the yard. My chickens aren't coming over there and ripping up your fucking garden, bro.
Yeah. Hey, if they come in your yard, they're your chickens.
They come in my yard, I shoot them, and then the fucking guy a couple lots over was yelling at me for shooting at his fucking chickens. I was like, keep your fucking chickens on your side.
Yeah, what does he want?
They're chickens, you can't. I was like, my chickens have a yard and they never leave. Do you know why? Because I provide them the needs that they have. I meet their needs, and then they have no desire. I mean, they get out occasionally and they fucking hunt for bugs and shit, but it's not a problem. And the other thing is that even if they do get out and I'm like, fuck, the chicken ripped something up, at least I can go to the box and be like, oh, I'm going to make an omelet. His chickens give me fucking nothing.
Yeah.
In fact, all of their eggs are fertilized and hatch into chicks that mostly get picked off by hawks and cats and shit.
Yeah.
They don't even care. They're just feral fucking chickens, man.
Yeah, at that point, jeez.
I'd rather have I don't like feral cats either. No. Or dogs, actually, because then they pack up and then they fucking kill shit.
Yeah.
Well, animals do what animals do. But I just don't want his animals doing it on my side of the fence. And if they come over here, I use my pellet gun and try to remove them. Which is
trying to make some food.
Not a good way to lead like a serious conversation about how like I'm an environmentalist. And how I think environmentalism has gone the wrong direction. I'm like, I murdered that motherfucker.
You're calling the herd, man. Calling the herd.
Hey, man, livestock is livestock.
That's very true. Even if it's pretty wild.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody's dog came over and started dog came over and killed a fucking sheep, you wouldn't think twice to shoot the dog. Like,
no.
Like,
I want chickens so they can eat my fucking insects. I got way too damn many insects.
Yeah. You got a small space. I don't think they'd appreciate you getting a chicken.
No, they didn't even like me getting like vining plants that went over the fence. So I highly doubt they'd take to chickens making noise.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
So my tech guru, what do we have lined up for this evening's show?
Well, we've got a trailer for The Bright Green Lies, and then a couple of clips, an interview with Mac's last name to be inserted.
Wilbert.
There we go. And then I got a video from a channel called Neely Makes, where it's kind of like how it's made, but it's just some dude who's not famous and has probably...
Is he Curiosity Stream or still on YouTube?
No, still on YouTube. I don't have a subscription to Curiosity Stream.
I've
been thinking about it. Seems like it's a pretty good deal.
I've heard a lot of like larger YouTube creators like that do those kinds of educational channels. Yeah. Actually, like they still keep their YouTube, but like because the ad revenues are so shit, like they're like, hey, we want to actually make this a profession. We need another thing. And Curiosity Stream is like a platform made for people like that.
Yeah, and then
the content they want. Yeah,
a lot of the ones that I watch, they also they have another one called Nebula, and so you do Curiosity Stream, you get Nebula. Yeah. I think about it more and more.
That's what I meant. I think I meant Nebula. I think.
Yeah, especially as Netflix is like jacking up the price more and more for the same not so great content. We've been writing down all the things we watch and being like, do we really need to pay for this crap anymore? Probably not.
That's where we're at, and it's like, how many? Okay, we're watching. We got HBO Max, and like, of course, HBO's got a bunch of cool shit. But like, out of all of it, like, what are we doing? We're watching Game of Thrones again. And it's like, and if it's not Game of Thrones, you know what we're watching? A rerun or a fucking episode of Rick and Morty for like the 8th or 10th time, right? Like,
no, and that's a great point. Is like most recently we've been watching Bob's Burgers from season 1 to season 10 again. I'm downloading season 11 and 12 as I can get them, and then we're doing on Netflix we end up watching like The Witcher, or Rachel will watch Bridgerton, and I was like, wait, there's sex in this show, I gotta watch this too. So we end up watching things that we've already watched, and it's just like, this isn't really all that great or worth it.
Dude, I mean, I know this is totally off topic, but I think it's an interesting thing, so let's fucking roll with it. Do you think that's just decision fatigue? Because we're just bombarded by so much content. We're like, I don't know what any of this is, but I know that I like Game of Thrones. So let's
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very much like, when you step into the grocery store and you're like, I want peanut butter. I've been having the same type of peanut butter for years. Maybe I should try something different. Holy shit, there's 50 different types of peanut butter. I'm gonna get the Adams. All right, we're good.
Yeah, the grocery store brand, creamy or chunky, depending on your preference.
Exactly.
It is all the same, bro.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And actually, I think some of this.
I get the stuff with oil on the top. It's got like.
Oh, the natural.
Yeah.
We did natural for a long time, and there's something about the emulsification. Like, most of it's just the constant fucking stirring, especially when you start a new jar and the bottom's all super dry. Like, I fucking hate that. Now, if you get a good mix on a jar, and like. It's the natural peanut butter. Like, I'm totally down for that. But we wind up just getting the store brand that's probably made by Jiffy or some other big peanut butter manufacturer, and then they just get paid to slap a grocery store label on it.
I will say that when it comes to the jam, it does make a difference, because I purchased, quote, jam, and it was very much a jelly, where it's like big chunks of like, just packed in, and it doesn't spread well and all that stuff. Oh, I hate it.
No, and if you're gonna spring, that's where I spring, right?
Yeah.
Like I spring on good preserves,
Absolutely. Now I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't go with the select store brand or whatever the hell it's called from Winco.
Sometimes they sell like a more premium jam under a store brand, but you don't go for like Smuckers or any of that garbage.
Yeah. I get that Knott's Berry Farm stuff.
Yeah, and that's just a personal opinion. It is not the opinion of this show. No, I'm just kidding.
None of this is
Smuckers fucking sucks, dude.
Give me some fucking money, Knott's Berry Farm. And then we also got just an electric versus gas breakdown. I found a short video. It's just done by a channel called Verify. I didn't look into them. I don't know if they're all that great or honest or whatever, but it was just like a quick like minute breakdown of like, oh yeah, here is what we could find about costs of extracting oil and building a car versus the cost of extracting oil and extracting lithium and building an electric car, and then over the lifetime which one uses more carbon. That was it. So we'll see. But yeah, we can go ahead and get started. So let's go to our first one.
We're in the midst of a 6 major extinction of life on this planet.
Paper or plastic is really not the question at this point. It's life versus a bare rock.
High voltage, keep out authorized personnel. What's going on back here?
This movement that was so honorable and so impassioned has turned into something completely different. It's all become, how do we continue to fuel this destruction?
There is a push for a 100% renewable world. What they don't talk about are the unseen harms caused by these technologies.
You may not directly be seeing any smoke come out of any smokestacks, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Companies are involved in these activities to make money. They're not trying to displace or change other things.
What they're actually talking about is sustaining high energy ways of life at the expense of the natural world.
I'm not comfortable with an industry that deceives me about something as important as climate change.
They claim it is good for the environment when actually it is harmful for the environment.
This shit ain't green.
This shit ain't green. I love that.
This shit ain't green. I actually have the book. I participated in a fundraiser. What? You done with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Space bar on accident.
Oops. Yeah, man. I actually have a copy of the book. I haven't read the whole thing. I started reading it. The thing is that I kind of want to read it to my kids.
Okay.
And having them in a position where, like, you know, our kids have kind of like, you can't just say, hey, it's time to sit down and read. Like, they have to kind of be in a state to sit still and like hear it. And integrate the concepts or whatever and really kind of tackle it. But like it's well written. They don't use complicated jargon.
Okay.
Very skilled writers. And Max and Lear, which is the woman with the gray hair and the hat, and Derek Jensen are the co-authors on that.
Yeah.
And I got it as I guess kind of like a silent auction gift at a fundraiser they were doing.
Oh, okay.
I have a signed copy. And I've actually met Max. I did a direct action training that he held up in Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. Some of the stuff in the next video, he talks about more direct action.
Yeah. And so I'll save it for that. But one of the things I like about that is they're just kind of like when he says, this shit ain't green, which is just a great line. And a lot of the images they show of like a logging truck and like all these things, it's like, you know, like environmentalism used to be about like preserving the natural world and the creatures that inhabit it and finding a way to make human, like us meeting our basic needs much less impactful, less extractive, and more facilitative, maybe is the right word, where we help, we use our brains and our hands and our ability to think in long time periods forward. And we use that to manage landscapes in a productive way that benefits us and benefits other organisms and benefits the system as a whole, including the abiotic elements like nutrient cycling and hydrology, right? And instead we have a system that just like pulls everything out and is destroying it. I think Lear in that clip or in that trailer said something to the effect of like we're basically looking at an uninhabitable rock. And so I wanted to ask
that was pretty powerful.
Have you ever heard the statistic that something like well, everybody knows like Silent Spring, right? And like Rachel Carson was like, oh, the birds aren't singing right now, and how impactful just that idea was to like make us think about agricultural chemicals differently. But have you heard like anything about old people be like, oh, you used to drive down this highway and you had to keep the windows rolled up because it's just a swarm
bugs everywhere.
Yeah, and then they were like, and it's not like that anymore. It's like, yeah, no,
it's not even old people, dude. The first time I drove into Chico, I was just bombarded by bugs, and like within 5 years, I was just gone. Just driving through the same farm town, nothing like that. And I have to imagine it's primarily due to pesticides, but probably also, breaking down of the environments where they would breed and things like that. And so it went from like, your windshield was just covered in bugs to you couldn't nary a bug to be squished.
Yeah, and the only time there's a window of time now when the rice fields are flooded that the insects are alive. So like drought, which is partly driven by climate change and partly the natural state of the California, right? Like a Mediterranean climate. But part of it is that, but you're right, I think, in the sense that like habitat destruction.
Yeah. Or just segmentation, even, it doesn't have to be just like, oh, the whole thing's gone. It just has to be like, oh, it's been broken up into such small pieces that it doesn't work for them.
It doesn't support the population that's needed by a healthy population. Right. And so there's that, but then there's like, and it's not, when you say pesticides, I think you're correct. Some of it is like insecticides used to target insects, even if it's killing non-target insects, right? And generally they try to be pretty good about that. But I think the big one is fucking herbicide. Because if you look at the growth of the use of glyphosate, a Roundup or whatever,
right?
Like what do you do with Roundup? You kill plants that you don't want. Well, what are those plants except food sources for fucking insects.
And hardy food sources during a time like they can survive with almost nothing, almost no input.
Right, because they're mostly weeds, right? That are
Yeah.
adapted to super harsh conditions and pop up in the middle of like a barren ass field.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's a combination. Herbicide would then be habitat destruction, right? Because,
Right, right. Food
even if
source and
those
everything.
insects benefit from exotic agricultural weeds, like it's still a habitat for them. But like
Yeah.
we just cover everything in poison because they don't want the weeds to grow up and block the sprinkler and not get even distribution of water, because it might decrease their yield by a quarter ton, and a quarter ton sells for $6. And like our job is to profit, so we'll do pretty much anything we can.
I mean,
to
as we
maximize
covered,
profit.
as we covered in the John Deere one, they talked about how thin their profit margins were. Mostly due to the fact that everyone does the same few types of foods, and so everyone's in competition with each other. So I mean,
Right.
You got to have that quarter ton or whatever extra just to make it through the year.
Yeah. And it's wild, and we don't need to go down the rabbit hole of agricultural policy,
Right.
but it fits within
But the pressure is real.
Today. Yeah, in this critique of what is environmentalism, and that's what I fucking hate about like, and likewise, not just the people that are like, oh, solar panels and electric cars will be great, like, and when in reality, no, because those objects require complex industrial supply chains to create, right?
Mhm.
Like, and fossil fuels, right, to create them, but also like people who are like, oh, I care about the planet, so I eat vegan, and it's like, right, but you're sourcing your fucking quinoa and coconut oil from like across the fucking globe, and
Mhm.
they're grown in the same industrial monocrops that animal feeds are, right? Like,
Right.
so you're not really doing anything. There's no way to ethically consume in an industrial economy, I think is the point.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if
In
you're
capitalist
having,
economy, period, right?
I mean, if you're having the same food year round, you're part of it, because you can't get the same food year round in one place. So.
No. And for vegans, if you actually have a healthy diet too, like, we did say we were going to rebrand this channel the Fuck Vegans channel, right? Like,
I think we covered that. Yeah.
We already covered that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And we decided against the rebrand.
Yeah.
We already got a box of t-shirts we still need to get rid of.
With thunderous vegan hating.
Yeah, but it's just that kind of, it's similar with this bright green lies, right? People are and guess who is spreading that message, my friend?
The people with all the money.
Bill fucking Gates and friends.
Oh, yeah, he has
a
lot of money from what I've heard.
Oh, because if you're a fucking capitalist, there's no place, as I said before, there's no place for capital to go except back into land.
Mm-hmm,
and so they're buying out farmers, and they're growing fucking soya, and they need a market for their soya, because their bottom line, like their objective is to accumulate profit,
right?
Not to provide food for a community, right? And vegans just don't get it, that like they're being programmed essentially. I mean, there's a lot that are animal ethics and this, that, and the other thing. And Lear herself was a vegan for a very long time, and then wrote a very kind of controversial book called The Vegetarian Myth, where she goes through her journey of being like an animal rights activist and a vegan, and how like basically she was having all these like medical issues, and like went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you probably got 2 years left unless you start eating meat, because your body is eating itself.
Yeah.
And so she wound up starting to eat meat, and then like kind of had this whole kind of like existential, like ideological crisis. Like, who am I? I'm eating with a plastic spoon because I don't want my silverware to touch meat, and like kind of all these puritanical things, and then realized it was all bullshit. So that gets incorporated into the bright green lies.
Yeah.
Is that like this whole idea that like we should eat lower on the food chain, but like also like we need to exist within our ecosystem. So if you live in the tropics, where like you get rain all the time and you can grow food year round, and you can have these like perennial cropping systems that provide your needed starches and sugars and all this other stuff in your proteins, then by all means eat an entirely plant-based diet. You live in a dry climate like us. Do you know what was here before fucking agriculture, which requires like intense amounts of industrial infrastructure and water.
Tubers, lots of tubers.
Grass. And unfortunately, we're not equipped with 4 stomachs. And so we can't eat grass, but guess what? We can eat things that eat grass.
Mm-hmm. Pretty well.
And so that's our place in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
It should all just be cattle range and in riparian areas where the groundwater's higher, oak trees or other nut producing trees. We can grow walnuts and almonds and stuff in with the oaks just to give us some variety and a hedge against, a bad crop year for the acorns. You don't want to not miss all of it, right?
Right.
But we could do that, but we don't because it's not profitable. And so instead we sell bright green lies.
I'm sure someone will figure out how to, create a machine where you feed grass in one end and it gives you meat out the other end, but isn't a cow.
That isn't.
And probably not a cow. It's a machine. It'll have 4 chambers.
Huh. That's actually an interesting concept.
Because that can be made profitable.
Yeah, maybe if it happens, but I don't think so. I think nature's figured it out over fucking hundreds of millions of years. I mean, hundreds of millions is actually not even. Like
no. Most, if you think about it, 65 million years ago, you had dinosaurs. Yeah, it's like tens of millions for most of the stuff that we're dealing with, if that.
Precisely.
Yeah. It's
hundreds of millions of years. There was like some really bizarre looking sea creatures.
Yes, that probably
and that's about
really
it.
good.
Fish.
Yeah. No, man, I don't think a lot of people realize just how quickly life went from, eukaryotic to prokaryotic, or is it vice versa? Anyway,
Cambrian explosion.
Yeah. that was not that long ago in geologic terms. Just a couple 100 million years ago, and now you got pugs. Poor pugs.
And now we have pugs. That was a perfect end to that discussion, and then we can roll into the next clip.
Doing it.
Pugs. Jesus. I love it.
Bright green environmentalists are people who believe that technological changes and reforms will make industrial civilization sustainable. And we wrote the book Bright Green Lies to refute this idea, to expose the lies. Technologies like solar panels, wind turbines, electric cars, geothermal energy, and so on, they're not good for the planet. In fact, they're extremely harmful to the planet. And as I record this video, I'm here at Thacker Pass where we're fighting a proposed lithium mine. Lithium demand is skyrocketing around the world because electric car batteries are lithium-ion batteries. And as solar and wind energy expand, they need more and more energy storage to smooth out the electrical supply for times when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining.
Thacker Pass. I saw the picture in the video and I was just like, what is all this green stuff? And so I pulled it up on the map and it's just it's humans. It's fucking humans.
Alfalfa field.
Yeah, like little square farms.
It's what's called pivot irrigation, and it makes a circle.
Oh, is that the way? Okay, yeah.
Well, it's what it is. Is it's on wheels and it's a pipe,
it's just got a tire,
and then you can just rotate it periodically around the field.
Yeah. I saw it. I was just like, it's always fucking squares with us. Why squares? Squares are hard to water.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the method you're using. Center pivot works, and they're mostly, I think, growing alfalfa because a lot of the land up there, including the proposed lithium mine he's talking about, is BLM land. So there's a lot of federal land that has cattle leases, and so they farm the alfalfa. So when the range isn't productive with grasses, they can still feed the cattle. And in that sense, that's probably a bad thing, right? And also cattle could be beneficial to land. And there's a ton of research in using cattle to restore grasslands. And I think it's one of the most promising solutions, especially I mentioned earlier, what is more sustainable? Like if we had a seasonal floodplain riparian area that's rich with trees, it could be, cultivated fruits and or improved wild varieties, selected wild varieties, just as indigenous people had done for tens of thousands of years. or and then grasslands, like, right, these rich grasslands that can support livestock and other large herbivores, and tule elk and deer and all that other stuff. Or we can fucking carve it up into squares, right, and punch holes into ancient water and suck that up and grow something that the vast majority of it doesn't feed people that live there.
Well, yeah, and then what they're talking about doing, I looked up Thacker Pass just to see, because like there's a couple different types of lithium mining. One is where it's basically a salt and clay deposits. You just shoot water, it comes to the surface, you let it dry, and then you harvest it that way. Yeah, but it's like 0.22% lithium. It's really small. And then these ones are more rich, but then of course you have to break apart rock and everything in whatever method you choose to do it.
I think Thacker Pass is a lithium clay project.
Okay.
Because the whole Great Basin, right, that until the Sierra Nevada rose during the, what do they call it, I think they called it the Sierra orthogeny. Anyway, the geologic period, orogeny, yeah. The period of the Sierra Nevadas and the plate digging under in these magma plumes that created the granite batholith that we know is the Sierra Nevada.
Yeah.
And that separated the Great Basin from the sea. And then after that, like for the next 60 million years or whatever, until the last few million, when it all dried up, there, all the rain and stuff, it would just drain into there, and they'd basically be salt lakes.
Yeah.
Much like Salt Lake City, Utah, or Salt Lake, the Great Salt Lake. And they concentrated all these this lithium there. There's a lot of uranium there in the soils as well.
Right.
In fact, like there's a few test mines in that area for uranium, but none of them were determined to be economically viable, so they were abandoned. But these lithium clays, they're able to, with great energy investment, a fossil energy investment, and then the creation of all sorts of toxic, I forget exactly what it is, but I think they use sulfuric acid or some other like super common industrial chemical or compound to basically, it's just a chemical reaction, and they can get the lithium to precipitate on something. And so that's the plan, is to just dig a big open pit mine and then use a whole bunch of toxic chemicals.
Yeah. Well, if it's digging, then it's not the one I'm thinking of. The one I'm thinking of is like fracking minus the frack. It's basically just injecting water down into a brine table, driving that brine upward, and then allowing the water to evaporate and separate.
Oh, so the lithium is in solution underground.
Yes, with other salts, and you drive it up by injecting water down.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. No, yeah. I'm almost positive the Thacker Pass area is just from evaporative like deposits.
Yeah, and but I'm pretty sure it's like a stone layer, and so it's probably going to be more like what you're saying, where it's just strip mine pretty much.
No, it'll be an open pit mine, because the company that's building it, which is a Canadian company, has one in South America somewhere. I want to say Argentina, but it might be Peru. I don't remember. But anyway, they have a they have a mine there, and it's an open pit mine.
Yeah, I saw the name of the company is like the Lithium Company of Americas or something like that.
Yeah, Lithium Americas. Yep.
Yeah. It's like,
and it's a Canadian company with mines in the or potentially in the U.S. and Latin America.
I think they have some in North Carolina too.
Maybe. Okay, I didn't know that. At either way, like I wasn't supposed to go, but I really, really desperately wanted to go to Thacker Pass. They were doing an occupation. I'm not sure if the occupation is ongoing. It's just BLM land, so they're basically camping, but their plan is to stay there.
Right.
And it's remarkable. And I saw how many people went to Standing Rock, right? And that's a whole nother thing. Like, that was a kind of indigenous solidarity that hasn't been seen probably since the Ghost Dance, is kind of the way I conceive of it, which is, a cross-cultural indigenous movement, where all the various traditions and tribal peoples came together, kind of as like American Indians. Like we're different, but we're all kind of in this class together. And so Dapple was a lot like that. But like you saw everybody flocking out there to be part of this like awesome thing. And a lot of people did put some stuff on the line. I know people that got attacked by private security forces, which are usually off-duty like sheriff's deputies and shit, and corporate goons or whatever. But at the same time, you have this like lithium mine, and then they're like, gotta come, we gotta occupy, we gotta stop this destruction. And so let's move to the next clip, and then I'll talk a little bit more. Are we doing the environmental movement next 10 years?
Yes. That's
okay.
Yes,
yeah, let's listen to that, and then I'll finish my thought on that.
Sounds good. What happened there?
You started it over.
Oh, no.
Skip ahead, right there.
There it is.
It's okay. You're doing a good job, buddy.
I meant to hit start and I accidentally hit back.
I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see the environmental movement split, even more so than it has already. I think the grassroots movement, indigenous peoples, many folks who truly prioritize the land, the health of the land, are going to be moving in a completely different direction than the mainstream climate movement, which will align itself with business interests, with corporations, with mainstream political parties to produce as much green energy as possible, so-called green energy. And in so doing, will consign much of the natural world to destruction. Many of these last wild places, like here at Thacker Pass, like at the Yellow Pine Solar Project in Nevada, like on the traditional Sami herding grounds in Scandinavia that are threatened by wind turbine development, like the deep ocean areas where rare earth mining is proposed to supply the minerals for this green energy transition. I think the split in the environmental movement is going to grow wider. The gap is going to grow deeper, and it will become more and more clear that there's the environmental movement, and then there's the energy production movement. There's the people who love the land and seek to defend our kin, these other species and beings who we reside here with, the mountains, the rivers, the air, the forests. And then there are the people who will sacrifice those to produce more energy, to power their cars, their gadgets, their screens. I think that we're likely to see an increasingly chaotic world as global warming accelerates, extreme weather intensifies, more and more refugees crowd the world. Much of this is inevitable. Much of this is already in motion. There's momentum behind it, and no matter what we can do now, much of this is coming. But what I hope to see over the next 10 years is the resurgence of a truly powerful grassroots movement that rises up against the fossil fuel industry, that rises up against the mining industry, the renewable energy industry, the dam building industry, the logging industry. I hope to see the growth of a grassroots food relocalization movement that treats this like the war that it is and moves on with an urgency, with a wartime footing to transform the way that we provide for ourselves as a society, as a world. I hope to see resistance movements that become increasingly effective, increasingly strategic and militant in pushing back by any means that are effective to stop the destruction of the planet, recognizing that this is a life and death struggle, that this is a time when we must stand with the living planet. Our lives depend on this. The lives of future generations depend on this. And so it's incredibly important that we act now to make that happen over the next 10 years. That we build the structures, the organizing units, the groups, the institutions, that we build power towards the future that we want to envision. I've heard it said that strategy is using what you have to get what you need in order to create the world that you want. So we need to be incredibly strategic at this time.
Yeah, I want the knife that woman has.
Yeah, no, that's actually
Big cleaver
pretty
with the
common
serrated blade.
among pastoral peoples. I think of the Central Asian steppe. I think it's probably where they are. There's a guy on YouTube who's in, I want to say like Kazakhstan or Tajikistan, or it might even be Mongolia. And like all he does is go out there and like go out into a river and like catch a fish and then like cook up. Where he's like, oh, I got this like quarter of like whatever, they butchered one of their yaks or they killed a deer or whatever, and he's got like a quarter of it and he comes and he chops it up. And yeah, they use those big knives. They're pretty rad. I think peoples of Eastern Europe use a similar knife too.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's definitely going for the militant option, which I think is completely necessary because, like, it seems like, the left will try to push the idea that, like, oh, things can be done peaceably, within the confines of the system. And it's like, I need you to look back in history and point to me at some times when that worked.
Oh,
like,
man.
You're being like fed lies about how big changes happen, and they're not peaceful.
Yeah, you brought up something really interesting that's kind of tangential to this. And I don't really have a term that I use for it, but essentially like it's essentially a bright green lie of fucking
Change.
Gandhi, dude.
Yeah.
No, like just people who,
gotcha.
like, worship. And it's like, dude, Gandhi was sure had a lot of important shit to say. He was also a very flawed individual. Right. And then also like, even people are like, oh, but Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, they followed Gandhi and on. I was like, no, the fucking civil rights movement said you get these, respectable looking colored people and you give them what they want, or what you get is Black Panthers walking around with fucking rifles.
Yeah.
And the same thing was true in the Indian independence movement. And the reason that you don't read about that shit in textbooks is because we're not supposed to know that's how it works. The only reason that non-violence works is because the alternative is fucking violence.
Right.
Right.
And there was violence.
Oh, and there absolutely was. In the Indian independence movement, there were dozens of factions that had the same strategic objective, but that were using violence. Like,
right.
And same in the civil rights movement, right? Like, and there's nothing wrong. And even some of the most respected figures in the civil rights movement were like, hey, just because I do my political actions and choose not to be violent doesn't mean that I'm a pacifist.
Right.
Like, I fucking have guns in my house. They drive by and shoot at us and they throw fucking Molotov cocktails. I'm sure as shit gonna protect myself and my family. They're not opposed to the use of violence. They're just choosing in their political actions to do nonviolence. So like you get blockades and stuff like that. Those are all really cool too. But what I appreciate that Max is saying, and he's a member of an organization called Deep Green Resistance. I have their manual. I think it's just called Deep Green Resistance. It was written by Lier and Keith, Derek Jensen, and another guy named Art McBay. Anyway, it's kind of like a strategy guide, and they cover a lot of stuff. And like, I think in that book, Derek Jensen, I think, wrote that chapter. He gives an example of like villages with larger Jewish populations in 1940s Europe. And he said like, some people like, or I guess like some uprisings in the camps or whatever, where they're like, why are we like, I mean, if they're going to kill us anyway, or they're going to work us to death or whatever, or they're going to work like people we love to death or murder them. Like we have nothing to lose, and they fucking fought back.
Yeah. Yeah. But you don't hear about that as much.
No, you don't hear about that, right? You hear, oh, it happened. And,
America came in and saved them and liberated them.
Yeah, liberated them. Yeah, it's part of our national mythology. But
yeah, really. Oh, it really is,
too, dude. Yeah, and I think in that same section they were talking about the French Resistance.
Yeah,
and how it was structured, because it's a book about structuring militant organizations, right?
Oh, gotcha.
Like basically, fucking cells, right? Like
Right,
cellular
right.
structure and all that. And they're talking about like how effective the French resistance to Nazi occupation was, because like there were people after the war had no idea the person who lived across the hall in their apartment building was in the resistance too, in a different cell. And their fucking security culture was so goddamn strong. You didn't even know, you thought your neighbor was a fucking a Nazi sympathizer, but they were actually in a resistance cell, an anti-Nazi resistance cell. And then, so what he's
Cool.
getting at there with that is kind of like, I mean, that's not the extent of what he said, but like, yeah, the split he was talking about, I already
Right.
see. And I think that was the point that I paused myself on making, is that you get like people who actually care about, like, I mean, I don't want to say they actually, everybody cares, right? That's engaging in the political work. There's people that see the strategic fallibility of certain tactics, and then others who see different tactics as being necessary. And that's kind of where he gets into, I hope that instead of, there's going to be a split, because there's always going to be people that are like, oh, I drive a Tesla. And it's like, right, but like, is that green? Or, oh, I always use renewable shopping bags, or I bought a stainless steel straw. And it's like, but did you need the fucking straw though? Is my point. Like, the glass has a lip, and we've been drinking out of fucking coconuts or fucking like sheep intestines and shit for like millennia, out of our hands, right? Like, do you really need a steel straw? No, but that steel straw, you were told, is better than a plastic straw. And instead of being like, oh, I'm going to just stop using straws, you said, I'm going to go get a steel straw. And that steel was mined and smelted, which we're going to talk a little bit about smelting a little bit. It was smelted and manufactured. It was put in a warehouse. And then there was somebody who doesn't grow their own food or manage a landscape who got paid to do advertising type for it and all that shit, until it wound up in your kitchen drawer and you used it like 3 times and then forgot it was there. And I think
gets used a lot, but just not by me.
No, and I'm not casting shade to those who use steel straws. I'm saying that is what the bright green lie is.
Right.
Is that there are ways that you can consume greener, when the problem is that consumption a priori means that you're like, if you're in a consumer economy, like, you're taking more than you're giving back. Like, we don't even give our waste back. Our culture is so fucking bankrupt. Like, instead of returning our shit to the soil, we put it in water and then pump it somewhere where there's this really electricity intensive process of making it so it's not as pathogenic. And then we pump that and overload nutrients into the rivers.
Like, a lot of it gets reclaimed, but
for invertebrates and all sorts of other organisms.
Yeah, a fair amount of it does get like reclaimed, turned into fertilizer. What I heard recently from a worker locally was that they used to capture the methane and burn it and use it for electricity or generation on site, but then they had some problems with the storage tanks and decided not to reinvest into repairing the storage tanks. They just said, fuck it, it's not saving us enough money. We don't need that.
So they just flare it off?
Yeah, now they do.
I there was somebody who came into like one of my TikTok comment threads. I think you saw that one, actually.
Yeah.
And he was like, our landfills are
composting is bad.
We need landfills because we take that gas. And I was like, most of that gas is like cogeneration. Like, they use it for their operation. It's not contributing in a significant amount to the grid.
Well, the thing was, he was wrong too. Most of them don't do that.
Well, right. I mean, the one here in Butte County does.
Yeah.
They capture their gas, and they have a generator on site that they use to, I forget, I think it's powering like crushing machines and other things like that.
Right.
Like for like the recycling side of the house.
Yeah.
But at any rate, like, right, but that yard waste and food scraps, instead of being food for detritivores and microorganisms, like fungi and bacteria and microarthropods and all those critters that need that stuff, and then eat that stuff, and then other things come and eat them, and then other things eat them, and supporting a web of life, you're putting it into a condition where it creates greenhouse gas
methane and
on
just all kinds
purpose
of
because then you can use them.
should burn it
No.
for something. Yeah, no, it doesn't make any
It
sense.
makes no
Like,
sense. But like the bright green lies thing is big, man. I think I might have told the story on a previous one. Did I tell the story about the pipeline protest with the solar panel cards? Or did I just kind of say I was going to talk about it?
I think you might have just said you were going to talk about it. Yeah.
So I was stationed in Delaware around the time of the Keystone XL pipeline protests in DC. And if you didn't know, Delaware is pretty close to Washington, DC. And so I participated not only in the sit-in where I was an arrestee on the 3rd day or 4th day, but I also went to all of the follow-up protests, and there were like 2 or 3 of them. And at one of them, they distributed all these cards, like these little kind of like poster cards. And on one side, it had like a picture of a coal mine, and on the other side, it had a picture of a solar panel. And so the whole idea was like, oh, we're going to take a picture with everybody's got their, coal up, and it looks gross, and we're going to flip it around. It's cool. It's solar panels.
Right.
And I remember openly mocking it shortly after I overheard people mocking the fact that somebody from the Socialist Worker newspaper was walking through the crowd selling copies. And I was just like, but even this book was only published like a couple years ago, last year, something like that. And everybody should check out both the documentary and the book, or at least the documentary, because that might be more accessible for some people.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I remember at that moment realizing what they talk about, and what Max was just saying is that like, this is not my environmental movement. And I've never been like super hardcore in like the land defender side of things. I mean, I kind of am, not really so much, but like I grew up in the country. So like, I wouldn't want development that like damages large swaths of land and all that other stuff.
Right.
I'm certainly against suburban sprawl. In my
poison
work
the
on
rivers and
housing,
everything.
we've actively spoken out against more sprawl. When they say, well, we need houses, and it's like, that sprawl is not for the people who need housing. That sprawl is for fucking developers to make money.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I've spoken out against sprawl and stuff like that, but I've never been like super hardcore about like that kind of like what they call biocentrism, where you're like, I mean, I do share that value, but biocentrism is basically like life is at the center of like moral questions, and that all life has an inherent value. So when he says, oh, we're protecting these landscapes and the creatures in them, like, that's because they're the ideology behind that is that like it was here, and our activity, we do not have the right to destroy that or make it extinct or whatever. Like, it has a right to exist. And it's interesting working with people in that space. In particular, I mentioned Lear Keith's book, The Vegetarian Myth, which I haven't read, but I'm familiar with the subject matter. I've listened to lectures on YouTube because that's what I do. But anyway,
it's easy to do.
It's a lot easier than reading for sure. I can put it on my phone while I do yard work.
Exactly.
At any rate, it's interesting coming in and having just that simple kind of like, no, it's not fucking beyond meat. Like, did you see how with all this press around like, oh, eating cows are so bad for the environment? And then guess what? The press for like how bad cows were dropped off after the IPO of fucking Beyond Beef. It was literally just manufactured hype for a fucking company to sell a product. And of course, all the trickle down, right? Because the soya, then the John Deere tractors and the fertilizer and pesticide companies, and all that, right? Like
Monsanto.
It was just hype for a new way to sell something that they have complete control over.
Right.
And so that to me is what the bright green lie is. It's just convincing ourselves that like something is bad and something is good, instead of what I was getting at with them is like, yes, of course I have to take an animal to eat. I'm an omnivore. Like, I'm an organism that relies on other organisms. And this whole idea that like animals are somehow superior to vegetables is within our own consciousness, like a way of controlling life instead of accepting
Do you mean to say like that the value of the life of an animal is more important?
Yeah, that
Okay,
idea that like, oh, I don't eat animals because animals are more valuable is
gotcha.
you imposing your superiority over um over the natural world. It's just part of the domination complex, right?
You're
So like,
gotcha.
I don't know, a fucking a wood lice, like a roly poly. I'm not sure if that's more intelligent or less intelligent than a slime mold. We know slime molds can solve fucking puzzles,
Yeah.
right? And so like, how do we define intelligence? By virtue of defining intelligence, we are asserting our dominance on the natural world rather than having a more ecological perspective that is like, we are organisms, we have metabolic needs. How we meet those metabolic needs is the most important question. And currently, we meet those metabolic needs through industrial extraction that's destroying those ecosystems,
Mhm.
right? And so the idea is that we need to stop extracting for our metabolic needs. And there's no green energy solution. There's no everybody goes vegan is not a fucking solution because like I said earlier, it doesn't work everywhere. Like we have to be organisms in the environment we live in and meet our metabolic needs within our environment in the ways that work in that environment.
Part of what didn't get covered in either one of the clips, but was in the Bright Green Lies video, was just the turning of everything on the planet into commodities and just really garbage when you think about it. Like in that case, in the video, they show like, some cute little, chibi toy that either some kid's going to play with for like a few hours and then forget about, or it'll go up on someone's shelf as a collectible, but like it's forever just garbage, pretty much.
I have a Baby Yoda Funko Pop. I'm guilty as fuck.
Ah, I know that I have a teleporter gun from Rick and Morty.
Oh, that's right. That was a bachelor party gift, though.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're not going to go into the details about the toy.
No. Let's just say.
But I thought that was
good.
clever. That was all
Yeah.
me, by the way. That was my idea.
It was a good idea.
Anyway, yeah. So no, absolutely, 100% correct. Like
so much of it is just wasted on like tchotchkes and stuff like that. We waste so much energy on just making. It's not even art. It's just shit. Like it's not original, it's not unique, it's none of that. It's like mass manufactured garbage that we're extracting from the earth in order to make. And to me, that's more offensive than like someone, making a car that they use to get transported around or something like that, or, building a new house or for whatever reason. It's just collectible garbage.
You kind of, I don't know, while you were talking, I was kind of brought something up for me. One thing that drives me nuts about like, especially like the American left, how they're like, oh, it's capitalism's problem. It's absolutely fucking capitalism's problem. The accumulation, need to accumulate, et cetera, so forth. But it's not just that, because we have had the Soviet Union and we have had other kind of different ways of structuring society that were still incredibly destructive. It's actually the industrial mode of production that's the problem, not the software, but the infrastructure, right? Like it's the fucking hardware of the system. It's not the political, it's not the social system. It's actually the means you use to as Vandana Shiva is a pretty famous or well-known environmental organizer activist. A lot of work on like seed genetics and seed saving. She's Indian. And if you couldn't tell from the name, Vandana Shiva. But anyway, she said something in one of her books called Earth Democracy, where she kind of offers the alternative, kind of. but that I really kind of have taken as my definition when people say, "Oh, bad capitalism." It's not just capitalism; it is a system that its fundamental drive is to turn living ecosystems into dead commodities, and that's exactly what you're saying when you're like, "It's just trash." It's all trash.
Yeah.
Our bodies don't create trash. Our piss and shit gets cycled by other organisms and gets returned to the system.
Yeah.
And the problem is that we've developed a mode where it's very linear, right? We pull it out of the ground, we turn it into a commodity, and then to the landfill it goes.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, if we can
Or
get
the
some
ocean
methane off
trash
of it.
pile.
Yeah, or a huge trash pile or whatever. And like, but that's essentially the drive of the system, is to just turn living ecosystems into dead commodities.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And that's why I do permaculture work. And that's why I talk about regenerative agriculture and all of these solutions. And what I said just a moment ago about being an organism in your ecosystem and meeting your metabolic needs in a way that makes sense for your ecosystem or your biome or ecotone or whatever you want to call it. Your bioregion. It's because ultimately, like, we have to stop extracting and destroying living ecosystems for dead commodities and figure out how to close the loop, like the recycle thing, which was also a bright green lie from decades back.
Oh,
because recycling is fucking super energy intensive. Like, there's
not only
trucks
that,
drive around and collect it, and they don't even recycle most of it.
That was what I was going to say. Is like, for me, I think over the past 2 years, that's the big lie that was destroyed, was the whole recycling lie. Like, especially like after China stopped accepting our garbage, they're like, no, I can't recycle a pizza box, and because it's got grease on it, and now that grease has become moldy, it's infected this entire pallet full of cardboard. The whole thing's garbage, and it's like, yeah, and you could have just thrown that in a compost pile, and some microbes would have been glad to eat up your grease.
Yeah, or use it to suppress some weeds for a while.
Yeah.
It'll eventually be consumed by microorganisms.
Yep.
It'll make them nice and happy. They'll be able to reproduce.
That's how I keep my walkways in the backyard.
Yeah,
I just have layers of cardboard.
And you're absolutely right. In cardboard, relatively speaking, I mean, there is pulp paper plantations are a problem.
Yeah.
The machines that they use are a problem. In the grand scheme of things, though, paper products are pretty low on my list of things to be pissed about, right? Like,
aluminum cans.
Aluminum. Aluminum cans. And it's an interesting factoid, though, that I, speak like environmentalism, like, I like beer. You like beer. Beer is good. But my point is that this kind of factoid that I had never thought about until someone brought it up. There are more calories, like, of energy, using calorie as a unit of energy. There are more calories in the fucking aluminum can than in the beer. Because it's fucking true. It's more energy to make the fucking can.
Extract it, make it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the best thing that we can get out of it is to smelt it down and use it for like some other kind of like not high-end stuff. Because once it's recycled, like, the quality decreases significantly.
Yeah.
And so there's uses for it for sure, but like, you're not going to make like high performance fucking engine parts or anything, right? Like,
no. The best you can hope for is another can, but even then, it's got the plastic impurities from the lining.
Yeah, or non-structural components that aren't gonna. You're not required to have like certain engineering specs on it. Like, you're not going to probably even make it a new can. The best thing you'll get out of it is it'll be like a wall bracket for a shelf, even if that, or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. I had a friend that made a small furnace out of a stainless steel pot, actually, that can melt aluminum.
I found a good video on how to make an electric furnace for yourself using like dead lantern batteries and foamcrete. Aircrete. And like, since the aircrete is so easy to cut, like, you can basically cut it with a wood saw, and you can get a little drill bit and drill out a circle thing, and then you just get these carbon tubes that are in lantern batteries, and you get, what do you call them? The adjustable wrenches, and clamp them onto the things, stick them inside, and, and you just use. He used a part from a microwave to generate the electricity, and basically, like, you have your little tiny furnace. You stick the two carbon rods together, and they generate just thousands of degrees of heat. And the aircrete is so light and so good at insulating heat that like none of it gets out. And you used a dead battery, like a dollar, aircrete brick, and not much else. And you can use it to like melt down cans and stuff like that, and do whatever it is you want to do with that.
Should fucking send that shit to Trash Robot.
Yeah. he's fun.
He's a fucking character. I like him a lot though.
Yeah,
I wish that like it wouldn't be too weird to be like, hey, I just follow you on TikTok, but I'm in the Bay Area and want to have lunch. I'll buy you a sandwich. Right? Like, just I want to talk.
Free sandwich, man. I'm sure he wouldn't pass that up.
Maybe like, I just want to talk. I love your philosophy.
Yeah.
Speaking of smelting metal.
Let's
roll the clip.
Roll that.
The other main method of making steel is by means of the electric arc furnace, or EAF as it's known. The EAF process predominantly uses cold steel scrap, making it one of the world's largest recycling processes. EAFs make up to 150 tons of steel in a single melt in less than an hour. The furnace is filled with recycled steel scrap. The roof is then swung into place and 3 graphite electrodes are lowered into the furnace. A powerful electric current is passed through the furnace. An arc is created and the heat generated melts the steel scrap. Lime and fluorspar are added and usually carbon and oxygen are blown into the melt. As a result, impurities in the metal combine to form a slag. The steel is sampled and analysed, and once it reaches its correct temperature and composition, it is tapped off. At this stage, final adjustments to precise customer specifications can be made by adding alloying elements. These furnaces give very precise control over composition and are used for producing a variety of special steels, including alloy steels and stainless steels. Many bulk steels are also increasingly made by this route, and it's expected that EAF output will account for half the world's steel production within a few years. Small steel-producing plants operating with EAFs closely linked to casting and rolling facilities are often referred to as mini-mills. These can produce relatively low volumes of specialist products. Mini-mills are often situated very close to where these products are most in demand.
So something I like about that one is the very end there. The version he was showing is mainly used for recycling of steel products. But at the very end, he pointed out that it doesn't need to be massive. There are benefits from scale, of course, but it can be done in the area where the product is needed, and so you're able to situate it where people live instead of having to put it out somewhere in the middle of nowhere and all that, and so you can kind of situate the actual furnace and the factory to make the things and housing, and since it's electric, you can put your electric generation all in the same area. And kind of like at least make it so it's a little bit less, moving of everything around. Something they didn't cover in that one is there's actually submerged arc or furnaces that are used for smelting of just pure ore. Well, not pure, but smelting of ores. It's basically the carbon rods are actually put in with the ore, and so it can melt the raw ore, and then you can refine that into your iron. And so I've got one step taken care of in the manufacturing process that can be done purely with electricity, not mining.
That's one step.
Not mining. That's one step though.
Right. And so that was kind of the purpose of the clip, is that like, here is this industrial process that can use electricity, even if we could generate the electricity, right, at scale enough.
Right.
Right. But ultimately, that's just a single step in the
Right.
manufacturing process. And the thing that people don't understand, and we've been kind of dancing around this over the course of several different conversations on various aspects of energy and peak oil and all this other stuff. It's like, even if we didn't buy the bright green lie and employed renewables or whatever in some capacities, like, even if renewable energy did not require the destruction of natural ecosystems, right? And renewable energy or whatever, green energy, wasn't being used to facilitate industrial extraction, like, the limits of energy, renewable energy. I hate the fucking term renewable energy, God, because it's not renewable, because solar panels don't make themselves. It's not fucking Skynet or anything.
And the sun is just fusing hydrogen into helium, and it's not going to go backwards and give us more energy. So it's not even renewable.
I mean, yeah.
It's on billion-year scale, so we don't want to think about it. But ultimately,
yeah,
even
on
the
a
sun's
human
not
scale,
renewable.
not relevant. But agreed, 100%. Even a star is not renewable.
Yeah,
everything has a terminus, right? Even the universe will eventually, collapse in on itself, or however it's going to go down.
You wish it would collapse in on itself. Heat death of the universe all the way.
That's right.
Just spread out forever.
But the point is that even so, there might be some complex manufacturing processes that can be done with electricity, which could be done by these non-fossil sources, I guess.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like that only a component of the manufacturing process can be done, whereas the rest of them, as of right now, as I've said, show like the lithium mine, show me one of those big earth movers that moves like 50 fucking tons of rock at one time.
Well, I
show
wonder,
me one of those that's running on an electric battery.
I wonder, like, the big earth movers, are they necessary, or are they just convenient because we currently have the fossil fuel to run them? Like,
well, I mean,
couldn't you do
only
like
being used because we have fossil fuels? Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Couldn't you do like massive, conveyor belts in order to get the things out of the pit up to the top level, and then refine them on site, so you don't have to haul metric tons of impure rock, most of which you're just going to toss anyway. I mean, it's in Nevada. The sun shines so much in Nevada.
The mines are these open pit mines, especially whether it's mountaintop removal or a copper mine or a lithium surface pit mine. Like, they're just such a fucking large scale. Like, how many goddamn conveyor belts are you going to have? Right? Like, and that's the problem, is like the one in Thacker Pass that's proposed, that of course the Nevada state government was like, yeah, because like
they're talking about 65,000 tons of lithium a day. I don't know if that's raw,
I think that's
lithium containing, or if that's the actual
no,
lithium
I think
going
it's the
out.
clay. And their method their chemists developed, if I remember correctly, the methods that their chemists developed could get as much as 2%.
Yeah, which ain't much. God damn.
No, but I mean,
it's
when
better,
we talk about like peak everything, right? And one of the interesting things, Richard Heinberg wrote a book called Peak Everything. I might have referred to it before, and I might have actually stated this factoid, but it's one that's actually committed to memory that I don't have to reference on a page. Is it like, you used to be able to get copper like right out of rock?
Yeah.
And it was like 6%. Like, the ore was like 6% copper.
Right.
And now we dig these massive fucking pit mines because we've used all the 6% copper ore that we can get at.
Right.
And now we're getting ore out of like 1.5% ore.
Right.
And
so
that's
headed down towards fractions of percentage. Yeah.
Right. And and then at some point it becomes economically impossible, because ultimately, like, it's not just money, but like, how much food does that represent? Like, how much education does that represent? How much healthcare does that represent? Like, how many societal resources are being deployed to chase after like a diminishing return, right? Like,
you got to chase that dragon, though.
Chasing the dragon. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Industrial supply chains, man. Even if industrial extraction is a problem because we're destroying ecosystems, and even the industrial supply chain, really,
I would
on
definitely
time scales that are relevant. Sorry, go ahead, and then I'll speak.
No, you're right. But I would definitely say that we're like wasting so many resources on stupid shit, like
War.
well, first and foremost, I would say, yeah. But like, I don't need to be, most of the people that are driving to and from work don't need to be driving to and from work. They don't even need to be going to an office building for work. They could work from home, use fewer resources doing it, and all that stuff. Like, there are so many like low hanging fruit, that we could take care of, and we're just like, no, we need to have people in office buildings for reasons that have nothing to do with real estate, investments, nothing like that, but we refuse to acknowledge and take action on some of the simpler things that we could fix. And instead we're just like, nope, gotta make it more electric cars for more people. Everyone should have 2 electric cars in their garage at all times, and hey, your kid just turned 15, they need a car too so they can get to school without you taking them, because you have to drive to work, so you're not available to drive your kid to school, or anything like that. Like, it's the fact that we're not the fact that we're not addressing any of it is just very frustrating.
And the fact that we're not employing fossil fuels are available, because we need to stop burning, but it ain't going to happen overnight. And the fact that we're not using what we're extracting to like rapidly transition our built environments away from needing to use massive amounts of electricity, or energy, period, is just shows how we're on a speeding bullet train towards like a brick wall or whatever.
Well, and that's what gets me is like, what is the ultimate plan? Like, okay, so the people that are extracting the fossil fuels and stuff, their whole goal is to keep you addicted to energy, electricity, whatever form it happens to be in. And like, if you run out of the fossil fuels that make the creation of the solar panels and all the other stuff they're selling you on easier, then like, or even possible, period, like, how do you make more of that? How do you keep it going for a little while longer? Is there just no like plan past the next 20 years or so, or like what's going on there?
I mean, I don't know. It's kind of grim. I teach a permaculture design class, or I'm a teaching assistant rather. And we were talking to other teaching assistants in our Sunday meeting, and I just kind of like was kind of blunt, and I think I made a couple of them uncomfortable. One of them at least, like. But anyway, I was just like really disappointed that like a lot of these students just aren't putting in any effort, and like I can exhaust myself trying to encourage them to put in effort,
effort in what manner?
To do the studies and to do the reading and watch the educational videos and to do the assignments.
Oh, I mean, that's students everywhere. Yeah.
Right. But my point is that if you're an accounting student, like all these fucking assholes that get like, I gotta like, anyway, I don't know how they do it. Cause like, I honestly, like, I put in a lot of effort, but like, I put in a lot less effort than I usually do. And I still got an A. And I'm wondering like, how little effort do you put in to get a 20% on your exam when exams are weighted 70% of your course grade? Like, you can't pass the fucking class with a 20.
Well, and like, who are these people in a permaculture course that aren't trying? Like, that's not something you have to take. That's not something you have to take. You don't have to take it. Yeah.
I don't. Maybe I'll explain a little bit more offline what I think it is. I certainly didn't say it in the space I was in.
They're doing it to get laid, aren't they?
Oh, no. It's an online class.
Okay.
So it doesn't really do well, and most of them are old white women. We had international students. We have some international students.
Well, that's the only other theory I had.
I'll talk to you about it offline. But my point was, I was expressing how frustrated I was and how exasperated, because like, this is exactly what everybody needs to know and needs to start integrating into their own practice and their own life. And yet, they're not, I mean, people have lives, I get it, but like, in my mind, there's nothing more important than like learning how, not like, oh, I recycle and oh, I compost. And,
Mhm.
you know, even with like, I have backyard chickens and people are like, oh, I got backyard chickens. Like, oh, it's sustainable. And it's like, no, I mean, it is. It's a fucking fantastic tool for making manure and getting a yield like from eggs and meat when they go to the soup pot when they stop laying.
Well, and keeping the nutrients
As
on
I
your
constantly
property
remind them.
as much as possible.
Right. Cycling, they're important to the function of cycling nutrients. And they can take like food scraps and table scraps and kind of slimy things that I might not eat, but they can eat them and they can digest them and they can get energy out of them and then they can shit them out and then I can compost that and then I can get nutrients for my garden. Right. Like, it's a great way when I mentioned closing loops, right?
Yeah.
Like figuring out how to do it. Fantastic. But you get these like people that get these like boutique chicken houses and they get all these rare varieties that like don't really do much, but they're pretty to look at.
I got a Polish chicken. He's got the big old comb and he lays eggs that are like meh.
Yeah, you know, and I'm totally okay with people who want to keep show animals. Like I do think that like the skill of breeding and like selection is like absolutely fundamental to human society.
Right.
And at least at this point, right, like indigenous peoples didn't really select, so they did select plants for sure. I'm not actually sure how much they selected animals. I doubt they had much interaction with selecting, and you know, except for indigenous peoples that domesticated animals, like peoples in South America that domesticated guinea pigs, shit like that. But my point being is that like understanding animal genetics and being able to breed and select is a really important skill. So I don't harp on those people, but my point is that like we shouldn't be doing this for some like bragging rights. Like, oh, look how sustainable I am. And you see that shit all the time with these fake fucking greenies or whatever you want to call them, the bright green lie people. You see it all the fucking time. It's all about bragging rights. It's like, I drive an electric car. I got a hybrid. No offense. You got it for the fuel economy, and that's totally fine. You're like, I don't want to spend money on fucking gas.
Yep.
Cool, man. And you were in the market for a car because your other one was shit.
Yes, my other car was gone. I didn't have one. I didn't have one for years.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't have a car for years either, or a cell phone. How far did I fall, my friend?
I know. Cell phone, big old car that's like a whale.
It is a fucking whale, but it was like $3,000 cash, and I've had to put very little money in it.
I finally paid mine off. It's been 6 years now. Yeah, they sent me the slip and everything. Okay.
We are about at time. Was there one more clip you wanted to do?
There was. It's very short. I'll play it just for fun.
No. We can go along. I just wanted to make sure that we're moving that direction.
Yeah, it's by a channel called Verify. Apparently, they're just like fact checker channel.
Oh,
it seemed neat. Yeah. We'll see.
Are electric cars worse for the environment than gas-powered cars? Our sources are the EPA and the U.S. Department of Energy. There's obviously a lot of variety between vehicles. So to help standardize things a bit, we're going to compare a Tesla Model 3, which was 2019's best-selling electric vehicle in the U.S., with 2019's best-selling gas-powered vehicle, the Ford F-150, which gets about 27 miles per gallon. The Oak Ridge National Laboratory compared the two and found a gas-powered vehicle like the F-150 emits 410 grams of carbon dioxide per mile. Meanwhile, the Model 3 emits 0 grams. But if you consider the emissions in generating the electricity to charge the car, it's 110 grams of CO2 per mile. The other factor to consider is the energy needed to produce the vehicles, especially an electric car battery. The EPA says it's true more greenhouse gases are emitted to produce an electric car than a gas car. However, when you add that to the reduced emissions per mile over a vehicle's lifetime, the EV emits nearly 50% less. So it's false that electric cars are worse for the environment than gas-powered cars. With your Verify, I'm Brent.
I love that we're talking about bright green lies, and you're like, you know what I want to bring into this?
Bright green lies.
Bright green lies.
No.
Which is a perfect tie-in to what the clip at the beginning was talking about, and the fact that past lithium mine. Yeah. Because like ultimately, like you have to cherry pick, and that's one of the limitations of science. whereas like other ways of knowing and producing knowledge might excel, and why we need to at least accept that those are valid ways of examining the world and analyzing it, is because like you have to cherry pick. You're just talking about a CO2 emission.
Yeah.
Like you're not, what is the environmental destruction? How about both?
The steel, the carbon fiber, the freaking
fucking everything. Copper mines,
lithium,
steel
cobalt,
mines,
nickel. Yeah.
plastic.
It skips over so much of it. Yeah.
I mean, fasteners, like
well, and I love that it was like a
harnesses.
Ford F-150.
Well, it is the most popular.
Yeah.
I mean, you drive, I mean, around here, it's farm country, bro. And so like every damn dealership, every day, yeah, right, where you live too.
Yeah.
Every damn dealership you drive by, there's like 60 fucking F-150s parked out front.
I was talking
like
about how
2 or 3 other cars.
I was talking with Rachel how trucks aren't even trucks anymore. Like, they got the extended cab and the bed is like 4 feet long. You can't even fit a couch in that son of a bitch. Like, what the hell's the point of a truck if you can't put a couch in the back of it and transport it around?
Well, admittedly, I was looking at the Ford has a new hybrid or electric. I think it's hybrid.
Yeah, the Ford F-150 Lightning. They have an all.
Oh, it's a 150. No, I'm speaking of a completely different model than the one.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, not a submodel or whatever you'd want to call it.
No, I did look into truck hybrids as well, and most of them get like the same gas mileage. I'm just like, how the fuck do you pull that off?
Funny that he's like, oh, and they get only 27 to the gallon. I was like, damn, bro.
Yours is like 22, I think. If that
highway, like not climbing mountains, maybe. In the city,
it's a whale.
In the city, it's closer to 17.
Oh my god, yeah.
And I don't drive a lot.
That's the thing.
In fact, I only drive like twice a week.
Yeah, but it's so sad to see like how little progress has been made in the last 40 or 50 years on cars. Like it's actually backsliding, it seems.
I don't know, dude, like the Model A got fucking like 32 miles a gallon.
Yeah. My I think it was like a 2007 Honda Accord got like 30. No. It was much older than that. It was 2000. That thing got 32 miles per gallon. And mind you, it's just a little passenger car, but like, how is it that we've barely made any progress? Like if you look at the Accord today, it's probably like 35 or something like that.
Well, because the diminishing returns, right? It's just like computer chips, right?
Demand.
You had that law where storage would double.
And
blah, 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 and then all of a sudden you're like, ooh, we have to like actually like do research into new materials because we kind of reached the limit of what we can get out of this. Right? That's why they're doing like, what is that little manufactured nano carbon wafers and shit like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and they're also talking about different materials, totally different conversation. But I just looked it up. 30 miles per gallon city on the new Accord, 2 miles per gallon worse.
Yeah, but you know what? It's loaded.
It's got bigger and it's prettier and it's got a Bluetooth and
it's got the seats. No, but seriously though,
the bald eagle seats.
They're not counting all of the when they say CO2 emissions. You know what? I can't say they're not counting because I haven't looked at their study.
One of the links that we have.
Go ahead.
One of the links that we have is to
in the description.
Yes, in the description is research that was done by a European NGO that is pretty well respected for not like taking money or anything like that and doing like good research. They showed very similar numbers, like a 10-fold reduction in the amount of resources period used for an electric car versus a gas car over the life of the car. And so like it's definitely real, but at the same time, do you need 2 cars in your garage for everyone? Probably not.
No, and that's why I'm a much bigger fan. I mentioned last week, or the week before, rather, last time we did this, about how I liked how Bernie Sanders put energy efficiency before renewable energy or whatever, sustainable energy. And I still say that's where I stand. I'd rather take that gigantic gem that we don't really need, because if people fucking walked, they didn't. Like we're built for walking. Bipedalism is like a structure for fucking walking.
Hey, you could shut down some gyms or some gyms, instead. Like
I mean, but
I've known people that walk everywhere and they are in shape and they don't have to pay for a gym.
Right, exactly. That's my point. Yeah, people in cities and shit. Yeah, I mean, people like gyms, but that's also like cultural conditioning, like in our whole vanity culture and all. There's a whole complex thing. But a lot of the times when you do it for health and fitness, like the reason that we have to go to a place to get fitness is because our entire built environment has a sedentary. We might walk from our office chair to our automobile, and then from our automobile to our couch. And that's the extent of it. But like, we're literally built for walking. So if you had neighborhoods that were built for walking, you wouldn't need all that other stuff. And my point
Very
is,
true. Yeah.
in my neighborhood, there's like a gigantic gym. Talking to somebody who lives like pretty much across the street, said, oh no, that used to be like a grocery store. And there was like a couple other stores. It was like a small strip mall. And then there's a whole, like a bunch of housing around there. People could walk. And then that closed and a gym bought it out. And so now it's just a gigantic gym with all sorts of really expensive, mostly really expensive cars in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody that lives there in the low income and senior housing apartments and all that shit have to go to Safeway, which if you don't have a car is about an hour, Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
A mile and a quarter. So it's like a good fucking 25-minute walk, 30-minute walk each way.
Bike with a basket.
Which makes it not practical for grocery shopping, right?
Yeah.
Versus being able to hop on your bike and ride up 4 or 5 blocks, grab 6 items you need for dinner and ride back, and it takes you 10 minutes round trip. Like, if that, right? Like, and so we've just built our environment shitty. And that's part of the bright green lie, is like pretending that we can fix what James Howard Kunstler, thinker, I might have mentioned before, calls the greatest misallocation of resources in human history, which is the project of suburbia. And all that bright green lies do is try and mask the fact that we fucked up. Not us. We just inherited that shit. It was all everybody else before us. And they didn't fucking think about it because they didn't have to fucking think about it. Just like boomers don't have to think about the climate crisis right now.
Because they're going to die. Yeah. Well, you're lucky. You've got the park nearby at least. You know, I mean, it's probably the same distance as the Safeway.
It is. Yeah.
Walking for health where I live is just an exercise in boredom because it's suburbia. There's no parks or anything like that. Like there's a water collection basin. You know, what do you call it? The ponding basin. Yeah. You know, but like every single sign on it says don't go in here. I mean, people do anyway, but yeah, it's just like, it's not meant to be a place where people can go and congregate and hang out. And so like, in order to get to the nearest park, I think it's like 3 miles, maybe more. and
we don't have public spaces. Like I was saying, if it wasn't a gigantic gym that you have to pay for membership, and instead you had maybe like a single building, you could put some office stuff. Hell, you could even have a small gym in there if you wanted one for like weight. Because, you know, everybody's engaged in farming and construction and other things that like use their body for muscular development. But you could have a coffee shop or around a promenade. And there are some little like suburban style developments that are actually quite nice once you get there in your car. Right. And then like if you know, over by Morning Thunder Cafe in Chico, there's the T-bar, and then there's this like a bunch of office buildings that are like mostly attorneys and shit.
Right.
Fucking beautiful, man. There's benches, there's all these pergolas and stuff. There's all these like old ass vines that have been there for 30 years. So they're all old and mature, and they've kind of like come through and tried to fix like the wood underneath without cutting all the vines off.
Nice.
And as it rots away. And it's just such a pleasant place to just sit.
And Bidwell Park's right across the street.
And there's a park across the street. Yeah. Oh yeah, gigantic park right across the street. Plus there's like an elementary school with a playground right across the other street.
Yeah.
And you have all of that. If you lived in that neighborhood, you have access to those spaces. Unfortunately, you go into most poor neighborhoods, and like you said, I'm not saying you live in a poor neighborhood, but I'm just saying for whatever reason, they like to segregate all that shit out and put like an apartments over here and then the park over that way.
We're right behind
the grocery store that's by the low income apartments.
Yep. Yeah. But we're right behind stores. There used to be what was it called? Big Lots. There used to be a Big Lots that shut down like maybe a year after I moved here. So like
it's vacant.
It's vacant. No.
Hobby Lobby.
Nothing's ever vacant for very long. When you can put a goddamn
Spirit Halloween store.
No, furniture store.
Oh yeah, the mattresses. Have we had a
Yeah.
conversation about how mattresses are just drugged
Furniture
up?
stores. Yes, they are.
Yeah,
They
okay,
absolutely are.
okay.
Yeah, dude. This like 2-block region has like 6 different furniture stores. There was an Osh nearby, and that shut down. Oh, I was so
I
sad.
like Dosh.
I
Yeah.
liked it too, and I moved in and it was there, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a good time." And then I think within 3 months it shut down, and that's a furniture place now too.
Oh, it
It's
got bought. I think it got bought by Lowe's like
Lowe's. It did,
many
yeah,
years ago, and then they were
and they closed it
maintaining
down.
it as like a sub brand or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. They were just
And
kind of
then,
being nice, and then they closed it down.
yeah,
Started closing them down. I think that one in Chico's still there.
no,
Oh, it's
no,
gone.
Osh, they closed the brand.
No. Oh, god damn it.
Yeah, no, they and somebody like some proprietor or whatever that had cash turned it
Yeah.
into whatever franchised Ace Hardware.
Oh, hey, at least
Which
it's
is
not
awkward
the
because like you
mattresses.
go to a place like Collier's Hardware downtown,
Yeah.
and they are also a franchisee of like True
Mhm.
Value or Ace or something.
I believe it's Ace, yeah.
But very nice. That's the way all of our stores should be.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
same when I went into like a paint store in San Francisco in the Mission one time. And I'm just like, I need hardware. And I go in, it's like everything's on shelves, and the person that works there is like, oh, you need this number of screw, you need this, blah, blah, blah. Boom. He goes to a little box on a shelf and he pulls out a drawer and he digs in there, grabs a bag, looks in it. Okay, here's what you want. So rad, they just pack it, use of vertical space, all that stuff.
That place is so tall. Yeah.
And instead, what do we get? Box stores. That Ace moved in. Like, I do not know. They must got a screaming deal on the real estate, or it's actually the developer.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a smaller developer that built that store, and they're the ones that operate the hardware store because like there's no fucking way that can be profitable on that square footage because like most of the square footage they can't fill.
Yeah.
And they don't have a need to fill it. And that should have just in the city. We talked about eminent domain. Take that shit and at minimum, even if it's going to continue to be like retail, divide that shit up,
chop it up,
it to where you get more diversity in there. Make a nice little promenade, put a little coffee shop in there, or a little wine bar, or whatever the fuck you want.
Yes.
And then also a hardware store, and also like maybe a clothing boutique or thrift store or something, right? Like. All this
that area needs it.
Box store bullshit just drives me fucking nuts.
Yeah, that area needs it, and then it's got the old Blockbuster that's now Spirit Halloween.
The old Blockbuster.
Yeah. In that same area, it's not the exact same parking lot, but I think the Save Mart used to be, or I used to have a Blockbuster like years ago.
Oh, the Blockbuster used to be on the corner of East and Cohasset.
Yeah.
That actually, the Subaru dealership across the street bought that, and they use it for a showroom for certain models, like their higher end models. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't buy it. The developer owns it. They started leasing it for like a show because the other side has all the maintenance and the huge car lots, and they wanted kind of like a more like intimate, comfortable, clean showroom. Because I don't think they had a showroom before. They just had like the lot.
Yeah.
At any rate, we're now talking about things that are very specific and irrelevant to anybody.
Very off course.
But this has been With Thunder's Applause podcast. And today we covered Bright Green Lies. And it's, again, like every week, it is not the entire picture. We just kind of scratched the surface on this stuff.
Past the veneer, expose the ugliness underneath. It's up to you to do further research.
And we include a lot of the stuff that we don't include here in the description below. And near the description, you can find a like and subscribe button.
Whoa,
notification bell, ting ting.
Hit them all.
All right. Are we? We're having another. I apologize too, and I should have said that in the check-in. I had something like on my agenda for weeks and weeks and weeks. Months, in fact. I think I fucking spaced, and so it was like Friday, and I was like, oh shit, dude, I can't do Sunday. And so we skipped last week, and I think we might actually for a little while go twice every other week.
Yeah.
So we will see you when we see you, if we see you, and if we don't see you, we won't see you.
That's true. Wait, do we ever see them? I don't think we ever see them. I think they see us.
No, eventually, maybe like if people actually watch the shit, there'll be like a live stream chat on the side, and
whoa,
people can talk shit to us, and we'll be like, "No, fuck you." What was the line from Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back? No. You
ever had
are the
your
ones
asshole
who are
licked
the
by a-
ball lickers.
Yes, that's more relevant than the one I was getting at.
Okay. Oh, you're doing the click commander?
No. You
Oh,
ever had your
okay,
asshole
okay.
licked by
We
a
just
fat
had
man
to
in an
do
overcoat?
Oh, yeah. Ball Steve and Fat Man in an overcoat. Classic. All right, buddy. We'll catch you later.
Keep it classy.
All right. Peace out, my friend.
Later.
Bye. And we're off.